All right, today we're going to dive into a really powerful economic idea, one that pretty much shapes everything from the car you buy to the job you're trying to land. We're talking about asymmetric information.
You ever been in a situation where you're, buying something online, maybe you're in a negotiation, and you just get that nagging feeling, right? That little voice in the back of your head saying, I think this person knows something I don't. That feeling that maybe, just maybe, you're getting taken for a ride.
Well, guess what? That feeling, it's not just you being paranoid. It's actually a fundamental part of how so many markets work. And there's this fantastic economic theory that explains exactly why it happens and, what the consequences are.
So what it all boils down to is a really simple, but honestly, a profound imbalance. The core idea is just this. In a whole lot of deals, one side just flat out knows more than the other. Okay, so the fancy term for this is asymmetric information. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like, right? It's a situation where the scales of information are totally tipped. One person has the key info and the other person is, well, they're kind of left in the dark. And let me tell you, this one simple idea has absolutely massive consequences.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's start with a classic go-to example. I mean, economists always use this one because it's just perfect. We're talking about the market for used cars.
Just think about it for a second. When you're buying a used car, the seller, they know everything. They know about that weird rattling noise that only shows up on a Tuesday. They know about that little fender bender that never got reported. They know the real maintenance history. But you, the buyer, you only know what they choose to tell you and whatever you can spot on the surface. That is a huge information gap.
So what happens because of this imbalance? Well, it can actually cause the entire market to just go haywire. See, buyers are smart. They know they might be getting a dud, so they're not going to pay top dollar. But here's the catch. If buyers are only willing to offer a low price, then all the folks with genuinely good used cars have absolutely no reason to sell them, right?
And this is where the problem really kicks in. The market gets flooded with what economists call lemons, the bad cars. Why? Because those are the only cars where the seller is perfectly happy to take that lowball offer a skeptical buyer is putting on the table. This whole effect has a name. It's called adverse selection, and it's a direct result of that information gap we've been talking about.
Okay, so that's cars. Now let's switch gears and see how this exact same problem plays out somewhere totally different, but way more personal for a lot of us. The job market. Yep, it turns out that whole frustrating, drawn-out hiring process, it's a classic story of asymmetric information. Just picture it. You're in a job interview. Who in that room has the information advantage? Who really knows if the candidate can actually do the job?
It's the candidate. Of course it is. You know your real skills. You know how hard you actually work, if you're a team player or not. The employer, though, they're trying to figure all that out from a piece of paper and maybe a one-hour chat. Talk about a huge information disadvantage.
And you know what? This explains so much about why getting a job can feel like such a long, grueling process. Companies aren't just trying to annoy you, really. They're desperately trying to solve their information problem. They pour a ton of time and money into trying to close that knowledge gap. And here's what that actually looks like. Every single step, from scanning resumes for the right degrees, to putting you through multiple rounds of interviews, to actually calling your references, and even using those 90-day probation periods, every one of those is a tool. And it's a tool designed for just one thing, to gather more data and lower the risk of making a bad hire. All right, let's move on to an arena where the stakes are, frankly, even higher. Let's talk about healthcare. Because here, these information gaps aren't just about money or convenience. Nope, they can be about life and death.
Think about it. When you go to a doctor, you're pretty much completely reliant on their expertise, right? As the patient, you have very little ability to judge if a doctor is actually any good, or if that really expensive procedure they're recommending is truly necessary. The information gap here is it's enormous.
And it gets even more complicated, because there's another layer to this. Your health insurance company has no idea what your day-to-day habits are. Do you eat well? Do you engage in risky behaviors? So they're facing that same adverse selection problem we saw with cars. The people who are most likely to need insurance are the ones who want it most. But they also face something called moral hazard, the idea that once you have insurance, you might be just a little less careful with your health. Both of these are classic information problems.
So here's the really crucial point. All the crazy complexity in our healthcare system, all the rules, the regulations, the middlemen, none of that is an accident. It's a direct response, a system that has grown to try and manage these massive high-stakes information gaps.
So what's happened is our systems evolved these kinds of solutions to try and bridge the gaps.
Things like licensing boards, right? They're there to signal a basic level of competence to patients. You've got malpractice insurance to protect patients from the worst-case scenarios. And things like employer-based health coverage. That's a way to pool good and bad risks together to stop the whole insurance market from collapsing from that adverse selection problem.
Okay, so we've looked at cars, we've looked at jobs, and we've looked at healthcare. Let's take a step back now, connect the dots, and really see the big picture here.
This table right here just lays out the pattern so clearly. For used cars, the seller knows more, so the market's solution is basically for buyers to be super skeptical and offer low prices. In the job market, the candidate has the info, which leads to all that intense screening. And in healthcare, where the information gaps are all over the place, the solution is this complex web of institutions and insurance. It's the same core problem, but it leads to totally different outcomes. And this, I think, is the most important takeaway from all of this. That suspicious car salesman, that never-ending hiring process, that totally confusing medical bill, they're not always the result of bad people trying to rip you off. A lot of the time, they're just the logical, predictable outcomes of a system that's built around an unequal distribution of information.
So here's a little challenge for you. The next time you feel like you might be getting a bad deal, just pause and ask yourself, okay, where's the asymmetric information here? Who knows what, and how is that imbalance shaping the way everyone is behaving? Because once you start looking for it, I promise, you are going to see it absolutely everywhere.